стосується закритого неба, вона дуже допомогла. Це не втягування країни НАТО в війну. Якщо чесно, в війну всі давно вже втягнуті. І точно не Україною.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began just over 1 month ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made numerous pleas to NATO and its allies to impose a no-fly zone over the country. In an impassioned address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress, Zelensky said it was vital to protect the sky over his country to stop Russia's incessant terror strikes and artillery fire. For the United States and its NATO allies, so far, the request has been too much. Below is a look at what a no-fly zone is, and why there isn't one over Ukraine. A no-fly zone is essentially a predetermined section of airspace in which military forces revoke access to all other aircraft. Enacting one means the country or countries imposing it take responsibility for both monitoring the designated airspace, constantly to catch violations, and for suppressing or destroying any aircraft that violate its boundaries. What it would mean is that American and NATO pilots would be up in the air over Ukraine, patrolling the sky with orders to chase away, or shoot down, any Russian plane that came into Ukraine. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin told CBS Boston about the implications of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That would create a situation in which direct combat between US and Russian pilots was a likelihood, Martin added. Why no-fly zone over Ukraine? It is that distinct possibility of direct combat between nuclear-armed nations, Russia and the US, that has kept both President Biden and his allies from refusing to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. The NATO alliance is made up of 30 member nations, but the US is generally seen as the leading state and is the largest contributor both militarily and financially. The other members have stuck by the Biden administration's stance, with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg saying a no-fly zone over Ukraine could end in a full-fledged war in Europe, involving many more countries and causing much more human suffering. So that's the reason why we make this painful decision. He bases that dire assessment on Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which states that an attack on any member nation will be considered an attack on all, obligating all member nations to respond in defense. So if a U.S. warplane were to be shot down over Ukraine enforcing a no-fly zone, for instance, it would be taken as an act of war against all 30 NATO